All right, Lee?
I guess I feel, for one thing, we'll have less need for MRIs once we get rid of petroleum and all the poisons that it creates, all the cancers that it creates. However, you know, we have to retake everything. Everything that has been produced has been the product of workers' hands. And we need to retake, to end alienation, to end capitalist alienations, to take back control of ourselves and everything we make, which also means the decision of what we're going to make and how we're going to make it and which materials we'll use. So I don't feel that there's anything about going back to the Stone Age. Freedom is the incorporation into the self of the best that humanity has yet to create. So all the great, ingenious things that humanity has created for itself that don't harm people on the earth should take us into the future. And also, I guess to Peter, I'd add that nothing is destroyed until it's replaced, that all these experiments and all this emergence is the replacement of capital while capital is on its deathbed.
Dr. Saeed?
Well, I don't know, they might dilute the example.
Go ahead.
Well, the problem I'm also seeing, I mean, it's fantastic, all these examples and counter-examples. Sorry, it's just that modernization in one place historically has entailed the devastation of many places as well at the same time. This is something that I think needs to be kept in mind. We can have a network of computers, but then the computers and all the toxins that are associated with it somehow ended up in India or in China, you know, with people basically sort of scrubbing them. Okay, but this is just one example. But what happens in one place is directly connected with another. And so in order to have struggles that I think in the end do not, or sort of can transcend these tensions that are created through capital accumulation, then there needs to be a concerted and coordinated effort. This is something that sort of really resonated with me when you were talking about sort of what the micro aspects, right? One of the things that I've noticed when I was reading and rereading a lot of texts about sort of socialist organizing historically is the fact that very little has come out in terms of everyday organizing and who did it and how. We have like no texts to draw upon from those experiences, those incredibly rich experiences, I'm sure, except maybe letters, you know, written, you know, one from the other. Maybe one can sort of see some implications as to what was really done, but we don't actually see, you know, sort of works that talk about well, the women that typed and that made sure that the postal service was called upon to have people informed. You know, all these kinds of activities which require coordination, require some sort of degree of centralization even, we don't really have much about. And I think this is important in order to, it's just one aspect, in order to be able to prevent, for example, going to the example about, which thank you for that, because I didn't see that connection. But one thing that I want to add to that about African governments in particular is that with the food, with the so-called food crisis induced by, you know, a lot of this, and also, you know, it also goes to the examples of shrubs and wood being depleted. Well, in the case of some African governments like Madagascar and Uganda, now they're selling land to the highest bidder in the Gulf and in China, right? I mean, that's part of the, I guess, if there were any intended consequences, this wouldn't be one of them, I'm sure. But that's one of the consequences of this uprising too. And that is also, to me, calls for greater coordination, because, I mean, the troubles in Kivu are not obviously overpopulation now. The troubles in Kivu are here. It's my cell phone. It is the computers that we use. Those are the troubles in Kivu as well. It's the coal that is used. The troubles with not having enough energy to run a cooker is large corporations taking, or governments taking forests, right? To feed what? Markets that are basically in three large poles called the EU, North America, and some parts of East Asia, right? Okay, so unless we can really sort of have this coordination, I don't see, I mean, that's one aspect that I think needs to be considered. Sorry.
You were talking about internationals, weren't you?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah. Teresa?
Well, I actually agree with you, and I think what we need to do is not only study the actual working coordination networks that are happening and have happened recently and less recently, and strengthen those, but also focus and encourage everybody to focus on moving from, being directed in our day-to-day life, directed by many forces above us, to being self-directed and autonomous. And there's all kinds of ways of doing that. All kinds of ways, and we know those ways. We don't need to go into them necessarily now. And the example I wanted to bring, just like I was saying about these sort of four movements, the so-called, I won't repeat it, that complex of moves that I outlined. I want to mention another one that's extremely powerful and important in my view, and it's about coordinated action in the oil, petroleum sector. And this can be very easily demonstrated. In fact, Lee and I and the graphic artist Seth Tobacman did a comic on it, a 9-page graphic narrative on what I'm going to say. So about this oil move. What happened was that there was an international oil boycott. Don't buy Esso, don't buy Texaco. Okay, and we're talking about around 2000 and subsequently. There were earlier oil embargoes, okay, lots of us, but we're just talking about the current one. So a lot of people not buying oil or gas from these big companies, right? Shell, etc. At the same time, there were many initiatives to keep the oil in the ground, and we can just look at the one in Nigeria, for example, where from at different points, but in a very major way, from 99 onwards, women in the Niger Delta stopped the flaring of natural gas that comes out with oil and shut down a lot of the oil installations. It rose to a crescendo in a huge action in 2002, in partly the build-up to the attack on Iraq. And so what you had here was a simultaneous production-consumption strike, where the large corporation, and in the oil industry we have the largest corporations in the world, has neither the oil input or the consumer output, and so doesn't have a corporation anymore. Talk about the death of the corporation, okay? Now that, of course, drove up the oil price and enhanced the profits of the corporations and the governments that get oil revenues. The other half of this coin, the other side of this coin, the yes to that no, was the development of direct deals between, for example, Chavez's Venezuela and Cuba. The oil for medical expertise, pharmaceutical, generic drug manufacturers, sports team organizers, etc., right, from Cuba to Venezuela. And the difference there is we're moving into the commoning market, which goes by a lot of other names, but it's the non-capitalist market. This is not Wall Street determining how many doctors for how many barrels of oil. It's people in those countries doing it, right, and doing all kinds of other self-valuations. The oil companies aren't involved. The pharmaceutical industry is not involved. The patents business is not involved. The World Trade Organization is not involved. Who is involved? Well, the Chavez enthusiasts and the Cuban, Committees for the Defense of the Revolution or whoever, okay? So there's just an example. It's not let's wait till we have the revolution, or yes, we have to burrow within as reformists in capitalism. I don't think those kind of polarities are relevant.